morning, everybody. I might be wearing the same shirt as yesterday. Mind your business. Today, I'm going to talk about your fifth assignment for the week, which is The Road Not Taken. One of my favorite poems. It's one of my favorite to analyze. So I'll go over it like real in depth just because I'm excited and I love to talk about it. So just a run through of what your assignments were this week. You had DGP week 16, and I uploaded a video for that. You had your TPCast 3 and 4, and I uploaded a video for that as well. You do have vocabulary due tomorrow at 11:59. I'll send a remind, and I'll post that on Schoology just to remind you guys elsewhere. And then your fifth assignment is to do this TPCast Over the Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. I don't know if you guys know a lot about Robert Frost, but he's a really famous author. He also wrote the poem Nothing Gold Can Stay, which is super famous. A lot of his poetry focused on nature, but yeah, he's super famous, and this is another really famous one. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up on my phone so I can read it to you. For this particular assignment, the really important thing that I wanted you guys to get from it was to try to figure out the theme of the poem. So that's why I put like, hey, like I really want you to know the theme of this poem, because I want you guys to really look at the words in the poem to try to figure out what it's telling you. So that's kind of why that was like my main focus, because a lot of people think they know what this poem's about, but they really don't. So that's why I kind of wanted you guys to read this. So the poem is called The Road Not Taken. You guys probably recognized it right away. So if you guys are doing the T portion of your TPCast, because you have to go in order before you can get to the theme portion. If you guys are doing the T portion of your TPCast, you have to try to talk to me about what you think the title means. And if you already know stuff about this poem, this is a great place where you can put like what you think you already know. It's called The Road Not Taken. So take a couple minutes to write that down. We're going to move on to paraphrase. So for paraphrasing, I'm just going to read the poem once, and then we're just going to talk about like what's literally happening inside the poem. This poem sounds super pretty when you read it out loud too. It's one of my favorites. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So I'm sure those last lines are very famous. I'm sure you recognize them. So this poem is just, he is walking in a yellow wood, and yellow means it's fall, so the leaves are turning colors. So he says that he's walking in a yellow wood, and he finds a fork, and there's two roads. So the whole poem is about him deciding what road he should take. That's the paraphrase. So it's deciding what road he needs to take when given two options. So let's look at connotation. We have to decide how he describes these roads and kind of what's going on with him that makes this decision so difficult. So in the first stanza, he says two roads diverged. He says, sorry I could not travel both. So first, he is struggling because he has to make a choice. He doesn't want to choose. He wants to take both paths to see what's there. So first he says sorry, which is an important word. He's sorry I could not travel both, because he says he's just one traveler, so he can't go two different ways. He says, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. So he was like looking at both roads to see what they looked like. He says, then he looks at the other as just as fair, and perhaps having the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. So first he looks at the second one and he was like, ooh, that one looks good. But then he says, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. So he realizes that both of the roads pretty much look similar. So at first, the second one, he's like, ooh, that looks good. But then he realizes that they had been worn about the same, like based on the people who walked down them. So he's like, well, they basically look the same. The third stanza, he says, "In both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black." So he said, in this early morning, there were leaves that had fallen, and no one has taken either path yet. So he's completely on his own. No one else has trodden either of these paths. They are fresh and new. So he doesn't see whether people are taking one more or less. He can't tell. Then he says, "Oh, I kept the first for another day." And he used an exclamation point. And I think the exclamation point is important if you're listing like words for connotation, because, you know, he's made his decision and he is elated. You know, he says, "I left the first for another day." So this is where he really makes his choice. He says, "Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back." So just like how he was sorry he couldn't travel both in the first stanza, in the third one, he knows that he'll never be back here and he'll probably never have the chance, you know, to take that second path again. So he, with this knowledge, he moves on. Now the fourth stanza is different. So the fourth stanza, this is a good shift option as well. For the fourth stanza, he is telling the story of him selecting these poems. So he's selecting these roads, sorry, not poems. He's telling the story about him selecting the road in the future. It says, "I shall be telling this with a sigh." So sigh is important. It's telling you his attitude. It's telling you how he feels. "Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." So you can see with connotation, with the words he's using to describe these woods, he's realizing that they're worn really about the same, and there's really no evidence for him to decide what people have taken which road. So how is it that he took the road less traveled by if he doesn't even know how much they've been traveled? Interesting. So moving on to attitude, obviously you can see that Robert Frost is grappling with his choice. He says he wishes he could just take both, but he knows he can't. So he's trying to look at them to see what they look like, but they literally look identical. So he's kind of, you know, having a crisis of choosing. You know, he's kind of struggling to choose. And then for the fourth stanza, like I said, this is probably a good place for a shift. He is telling the story and he's sighing. And what he says is, "I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." But in the fourth stanza, there's no evidence that he took the road less traveled by at all. He says that both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. He has no idea which one has been traveled, and he says they both look the same. So in the fourth stanza, what he's saying does not make sense with the choice that he made previously in the first three stanzas. So that's interesting. For a shift, I think that is an important shift in the poem, is from the first three stanzas to the last one. So we have to look at the title again, and this is super important. So once you get to the second title, right before you write your theme, I want you to look. The title is called "The Road Not Taken." That is the title of the poem. It's not "The Road Less Traveled By." It's not "It Had Made All the Difference." It's none of that. It says "The Road Not Taken." So you need to consider, what is the impact on Robert Frost knowing that there was a road not taken? Do you see where I'm going with this? I hope you do. So when you guys are writing your theme, I want you to consider what he's really saying. I'll give you a hint. He is not saying that you should go your own way because blah, blah, blah. That is not what he is saying right now. What is happening in this poem, and why it's titled "The Road Not Taken," is that Robert Frost is having difficulty grappling with choices. Okay? So I hope that helps. God, I love this poem, so I'm really excited. I can't wait to read what you guys think. This is the last assignment for the week. Don't forget that vocab is due tomorrow at 11:59. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. If I keep talking, I'm going to give it away. Okay, bye.